as fireworks illuminated the Washington skyline on Independence Day. A White House ultimatum letter was already set to unleash a $1.3 trillion shockwave through global trade networks. Canada faces the potential loss of $62 billion in its steel, aluminum, and automotive industries with a single click of the send button. President Trump has declared that a tariff structure ranging from 10% to 70% on multiple nations will ignite trade negotiations starting August 1st, compelling countries to agree swiftly or face steep penalties. Within 48 hours, the United Kingdom and Vietnam hurriedly inked agreements to sidestep the consequences, while Ottawa adopted a strategic silence. Prime Minister Mark Carney's calculated pause, striking at the precise moment, threatens to transform Independence Day festivities into a thunderous clash reverberating back to the White House, initiating the most significant trade confrontation in North America since NAFTA in 1994. In today's video, join Prestige Politics as we uncover the hidden strategies behind Donald Trump's sweeping tariff policies and explore the bold countermeasures Prime Minister Mark Carney might deploy, potentially sparking turbulence in global financial markets. Be sure to subscribe and activate the notification bell to stay updated with our latest insights. As Washington's Independence Day fireworks burst, Ottawa made its first subtle move. On June 30th, the Carney administration quietly abandoned its 3% digital services tax targeting tech giants like Amazon, Google, and Meta just hours before its implementation. This decision swiftly reopened discussions with the White House, though Carney emphasized it was a tactical lure, not a surrender. Unlike London and Hanoi, which opted for provisional agreements, the former Bank of England governor insisted he would not bow to an artificial deadline. He compared negotiating with Trump to a chess match where the rules constantly shift, requiring Canada to stay agile, adaptable, yet resolute. After conceding this minor point, Ottawa deliberately slowed technical negotiations, postponing meeting schedules indefinitely and adding complex annexes to briefing documents, forcing the U.S. delegation to disclose further demands, from electric vehicle quotas to battery supply restrictions. While Carney entangled Trump in bureaucratic delays, the White House took to Twitter to tout two new agreements: a 10% preferential tariff for 100,000 British vehicles annually and a 20% to 40% deal on Vietnamese goods to curb Chinese transshipments. Conservative outlets celebrated these as major wins, though analysts pointed out they accounted for just 1% of U.S. imports. Meanwhile, Ottawa's corridors remained discreet. In a single week, Canada's House of Commons conducted 3 closed-door sessions on the Milk Fortress, a quota and tariff system with duties up to 300% protecting Quebec and Ontario dairy farms. Under pressure from the Farmers Alliance, lawmakers passed legislation barring supply management from international deals, leading a U.S. trade official to call it an insurmountable obstacle. This deadlock swiftly ricocheted to the Oval Office. On July 11th, Trump abruptly raised the proposed tariff on Canada to 35%, warning of further escalation if Ottawa continued to stall. Carney responded calmly with data. Canada purchases $349.4 billion in U.S. goods annually, surpassing Japan and Germany combined. A tariff trigger would first harm the Detroit-Chicago supply chain. Carney's deliberate, firm approach shines here. He offered a minor concession to appear cooperative while erecting a legal barrier to safeguard key sectors like dairy, green steel, and EV batteries. Each day, pressure from U.S. businesses, particularly tech giants and Michigan's manufacturing plants, mounts against the White House, where Trump seeks a rapid victory before the August 1st deadline. Will the president back down, or will he escalate to the 70% tariff he threatened in early July? If Trump acts, what countermeasures beyond the digital tax will Canada employ to protect 900,000 jobs in its steel, aluminum, and auto sectors? The outcome will shape the future of North America's most ambitious trade agreement since NAFTA and could turn this year's Independence Day celebrations into the opening salvo of an unprecedented tariff conflict. The stakes extend beyond steel and aluminum. The dairy dispute has emerged as a non-negotiable boundary on this new trade chessboard. Canada's supply management system, with quotas and import duties exceeding 300% on milk beyond limits, safeguards 339,000 jobs, primarily in Ontario and Quebec, provinces controlling 170 parliamentary seats. At this scale, every liter of milk represents not just a child's breakfast, but a political lifeline for any prime minister aiming to retain power. From Washington, Trump labels this system a protectionist stronghold, accusing Ottawa of choking U.S. farmers with exorbitant tariffs and demanding Canada eliminate quotas, open 15% of its dairy market to U.S. producers, and threatening 70% tariffs if it refuses. On Truth Social, he repeatedly highlights Canada's tremendously high tariffs, claiming the dairy barrier surpasses the 2018 steel duties. His aim is clear: dismantle North America's last agricultural shield while securing a symbolic win for Wisconsin voters before midterms. Ottawa, however, has laid a legal trap. On August 8th, Canada's House of Commons unanimously passed Bill C-98, dubbed the Supply Management Shield, prohibiting ministers from negotiating quota increases or tariff reductions outside the system. 3 days later, the Senate approved it, with Reuters noting the rare unanimous support that halted talks just before Parliament's summer break. This vote struck the White House like a thunderbolt. Carney dangled the digital tax as bait, but firmly locked the dairy door, the very issue Trump insists must be resolved. Concurrently, Canada's Agriculture Ministry issued a report warning that dismantling quotas could slash domestic milk prices by 18% in a quarter, erase $6 billion in farm value, and jeopardize 72,000 processing jobs in Quebec City and Toronto. The message to Washington was unmistakable: tampering with dairy challenges Canada's federal framework. Dairy Farmers of Canada launched the Hands Off Our Milk campaign, with green and white signs lining Highway 401, turning milk into a political flashpoint at Trump's Michigan rallies. Across the border, the White House faces a predicament. Lowering tariffs risks appearing weak to Carney and losing rural U.S. votes. Imposing a 70% tariff could provoke a $35 billion Canadian counterstrike on steel and aluminum, hitting Detroit hardest. A White House aide told Reuters that Carney flipped the board, forcing the U.S. to lose leverage while bracing for impacts on dairy, General Motors, and Walmart, where cheese, cans, and car parts could surge by 50%. This explains why, amid Independence Day fireworks, Carney could afford to wait patiently, making Trump feel the pressure. With Bill C-98, Canada steers negotiations into a deadlock. For a deal, the U.S. must compromise, escalating risks, economic and political fallout. Through the narrow lens of supply management, Carney transforms domestic strength into global leverage, redirecting the 4th of July fireworks back to Washington and forcing the administration to weigh whether targeting Canada's dairy is worth risking the $1.3 trillion supply chain teetering on the edge of a 70% tariff.